Welcome, Wargamers, to the spicy pilgrimages of the Mortal Realms. Today, we are talking about Dawnbringers, The Mad King Rises, Book 4 of the Dawnbringer series. I'm sorry, Book 4, I think, and Part 3 of its coverage here on the channel. I don't know, there's getting to be so many of them, getting all jumbled up in my head, especially as I work ahead now. If you want to understand where we are with the story, please go watch the previous videos in the Dawnbringers playlist. I have a link in the description down below. All of them are ads-free, so you can just turn it on, binge it, bust out your paints and models, and follow along. And as we discussed in my previous video, the Ghiran side of the Crusade is not doing good, and so today we're going to focus on the Akshi side. Now, as I did mention, all these videos are ad-free, and that's because of the awesome folks like you who use the affiliate link down below in my link tree to save money and also support my family. Anytime you use any of these links, a little tip goes in my tip jar and goes directly to supporting me, my wife, our cats, the channel, the whole thing, and I could not be more appreciative. And as we stare down the barrel of a new edition of Age of Sigmar that I am very excited about, I also want to throw a shout out to Goonhammer because they are going to have tons of tactics and information to help new players or existing players get caught up with what's going on. So now is the time in all of these Dawnbringer books where we have to hit the pause button a little bit and pivot our perspective, right? Episode 2 ended with the Ghiran Crusade making a brilliant escape from the Fleshier Court domain. Usharin's back in a mean way, but now we have to understand what's going on with the Akshi side, known as the Crusade of Fire. And they've had a heck of a journey themselves, right? They have suffered multiple defeats, reinforcements, losses, like they've had allies come and join them temporarily and then leave. And the major theme that they've been battling as well is this internal struggle between a form of religious zealotry that threatens to take the entire crusade apart. And to be honest with you, this story, because I was like, how are they going to just smooth right into this kind of like nasty mess that this crusade has gotten themselves into? It picks up in a way that was both unexpected and totally delightful. Rather than the Dawnbringer Crusade itself, our scene on this, section of the map opens up with Luca Vi. Now, if you don't know who that is, the Nightmare Queen is the named Vengorian Lord. She's the female Vengorian Lord that the Soulblight Grave Lords have. One where she's like the top half is a vampire, the bottom half is sort of like a dragon monster. And she's hanging upside down and sleeping and is awoken by some kind of clatter in the distance. Now, this is a section that has a lot of sidebars, if I'm going to be honest with you. So to get the full context, I'm going to kind of nurse the scene along a little bit because it's kind of awkward to read at first. But essentially the story here is that she's in this spot waiting for Lord Vordry to arrive. That is another one of the dynasties of Soulblight Gravelords. He's the one who has like the big zombie dragon and the Crimson Keep. Basically, her vampire order and his are in a tizzy about Vi's, types of vampires, the Vengorian Lords, being a bit more animalistic. And there was some incident where the two vampire houses collided and a bunch of the Vordry guys got struck down by the monsters who went a little feral. Basically, it's an accusation that Luca Vi's people are just wild and need to be put down. Which, if you know her story, is kind of like her internal, turmoil that she focuses on, is like, I am this monster, but also I'm not. The Lords of the Crimson Keep challenged her to an honor duel, and this was the place, wherever the scene opened up at, that both parties predicted the Crimson Keep would appear. Now, we've talked about the Crimson Keep a bit. Basically, it's a castle that belongs to Lord Vordry, and it just kind of teleports seemingly at random across the realms. Its gates open, the Blood Knights go out, destroy everything, come back, and basically it's the idea of Nagash using Lord Vordry as his hit squad, but he doesn't have any freedom to enjoy that. So they're just hanging out waiting for each other, but all of that is a side story that, frankly, we don't really get to see at this point. Because while Luca Vi is waiting for the castle to appear, the Crusade of Fire crests over a nearby hill. And the sounds that awoke her were cannons. The Crusade itself had unexpectedly run along this vampire feud. A metalith of Aqua Ghiranus had basically broken free of its rigging and was kind of drifting. These are the big floating rocks that they use for transportation and also as founts of water from Ghiran. Basically, it just started drifting over the hill, and so all these people are scrambling over like, go get the thing! And as they cross the hill, they see, snap, we just walked into something real mean. Now, it's at this point, Luca Vi has a decision to make. And so she leaps down and starts making her way through the cities of Sigmar units. And when I say through them, I mean, there are some like really cool scenes here. There's some Stormcast mixed in as well, but they're putting up a good fight. But like, she just claws and tears them into nothingness. And it's this very odd encounter battle where nobody was expecting to fight each other until the Crimson Keep begins to manifest, at which point Luca looks down at what she's doing, looks over at the castle, and goes, well, this is small potatoes, and ducks out. Basically, she retreats in good order. You know, she's taken a bunch of casualties with her as she goes. And on her way out, she decides to kind of spoil the fun of the crusade. Again, she can't stay for the whole party, but I can do something. And she essentially poisons the water in one of the aqualiths, or the metalliths that have aqua Guaranis pouring from it, that had drifted this way. So their main water source broke free of rigging, drifted towards the Soulblight Keep. Luca comes down, poisons it. And then she ducks out. She's like, I gotta go hang with Lord Bordrai. And like I said, it's not just one of their water sources, it's the biggest one. And this encounter battle that has huge consequences is where we pick back up with the Akshi Crusade, having just survived contact with a Soulblight Gravelord's army. And we meet our heroes in sort of a council meeting of leadership where none other than Neeve Black Talon is on trial. And the basic problem as the Crusade sees it is this. The Metallith drifted off because these cultists keep taking the wheels off the wagons for their weird, zealous, spin the wheel turns, all this kind of stuff, religious nonsense. In the eyes of the military guards here. Neeve saw where the Metallith was headed, and that monsters, like these giant, we would call them Vengorian lords, but from her perspective, monsters, were patrolling the outskirts of this defensive perimeter, and so she launched an assault on the Vangori, essentially in their own defense. She'll run up, they'll distract the vampire lords, humans can go, get all the Metallith stuff, bring it back, and then we'll retreat in good order. That's kind of what she was hoping for. Unfortunately, she brought a lot more Cities of Sigmar units into the fight than was intended because it bogged down. They had trouble getting the Metallith, pulled back to where it should be, so it took a lot longer than expected, and ultimately Luca poisoned the well. Partially over the rage that she was feeling of Neeve coming in and messing up her Vengorian lords. When I say poisoned, like the well used to spit water and now it just heaves out like blood. Like she put a curse on it or something. And the arguments, in defense and also against Neeve Black Talon's intervention essentially boil over, and she just leaves. She says, you're on your own, and she storms out. Pun intended. So this is a situation where they just lost some of their best allies. Neeve is an incredibly powerful Stormcast to have on your side, because they needed to point the finger somewhere and point blame on to why the Crusade is falling apart, right? It's falling apart because you took the wheels off the wagon and your Metallith drifted away, but it's much easier to blame Neeve for instigating this fight that got it poisoned. Which, to be honest, as someone who reads a lot of these books, I like this as a tension where it's a warrior making the decision that to them makes the most sense reasonably, and then you have sort of the normal people or the society or society leads, whether they're mortals or not, questioning that, but they have to work together in such a way, and then this just falls apart. And so our story begins with the Akshi Crusade losing, a massive source of potable water as well as some incredible allies. And it's here that the Crusade just pauses for a bit. They honestly just kind of stop, and two camps form. Those dedicated to Pontifex Zenestra and the Cult of the Wheel, which, let's be honest, makes up an overwhelming majority of the Crusade at this point. And they're all being fueled by religious zealotry. Whatever she says goes. Of course, she has the best intentions. When she judges Neeve Black Talon, we all should judge Neeve Black Talon, kind of a thing. And the remainder that either want to, wait for Lord Vedra to arrive, as she promised she would. This is like way back in book 1 when she ducked out. Or they want to go back to Hammer Hall outright. Say the Crusade is over, let's just turn back. And this kind of sect, this camp, if you will, is formed up a lot of the old military guard. They're like, well, we have orders from Vedra. Like, it's not about their fear or anything like that. The Crusade isn't working. We've been broken into a million pieces. We should just go back and try again. Or they say we should wait because my captain, my Grand Marshal told me she was coming and I believe her. A minority, but a vocal minority amongst the Crusade. And sort of the leader of this team of people, this camp, if you will, is a young officer named Thungismold, which is an awesome name. And he's just widely regarded as a good kid. And kid is emphasized because he is an exceptionally young graduate of officer school. He's an artillery commander, but he is the highest ranking non-in-the-pocket of Pontifex Zenestra military leader that they have. It was at that big trial where he spoke in the defense of Neeve Black Talon. He's the one leading the military troops who probably got killed more than others, and he's saying, we needed to do this. There was, you know what I mean? Like, there was no other way, because if the Vangorian Lords just got a hold of the Metalith, we'd be in trouble anyway. So, like, Neeve stretching out to kind of at least attempt to distract them was helpful, even if it didn't pan out. It's not her fault. You know, he's trying to be reasonable, but nobody wants to hear him. Because it was the main Gyaranis Metalith that they have, strict water rationings are put in place. And this only ratchets up the discontent because you are in, of course, the realm of fire. Everyone's mouth is dry. They're all burning up. Like, they just need water. And it leads up to one night, and my assumption is, based on this, that it happens in such a way that the camp, or the crusade rather, stops for like a day or two to like figure out what they want to do. The trial happens there, and on maybe the second or third night, the sentries begin blaring their horns because they see lights on the horizon. So a bunch of the groggy men come out, they start, loading their guns, forming up lines, only to realize that the lights that they are seeing are moving away. And they realize to their cold horror that Smold is leading his men back to safety. Basically, the most professional military and logistic arm of the Akshi Crusade said, we're done. Grand Marshal Vedra has told us that she's going to come, so we're either going to find a defensible position and wait for her, or we are going to return to Hammerhall Akshi. They didn't tell anybody which they're going to do. So this is a plot thread that's being thrown out there, and I'm excited to see what happens to it. Now, it's important to note here that this is not a unanimous decision amongst people who are not believers in the cult of the wheel. For example, elves and Duarden that were not part of the cult stayed for their own reasons, as did some of the soldiers that saw themselves duty-bound, to Vedra to see this through. There's a bunch of different opinions and reasons on why we should go or stay, and you have to remember that even though we've gotten further and further from the origins of this grand crusade, it initially enraptured people because the idea is you get to go be a pioneer, and if you found the city, you get to secure your place in the nobility of it going forward. It's money. It's riches, it's glory, and for elves and Duarden that live so much longer than men, it only makes more sense, right? That reason only becomes grander. Many of the crusade that were still with the Pontifex, and I'm going to point that out. When I say crusade from now on, I'm talking about just the religious cultists, largely. The military arm is gone, they don't come back this story, so let's just put a pin in that. When I say Crusade of Fire, we're talking about Zenestra at this point. Many of her flock are freaking out because they just lost a bunch of guns and logistics and stuff, but Pontifex Zenestra sees this as a boon, a good thing. And the reason is, now the crusade can be of one mind. And her quote that I love to death, is, what were logistics compared to righteousness? Right? We're going to see this through because we're righteous. We don't need them and all their plans and guns and armor. And she says, hey, everybody, on top of that, once the doubters and the non-believers left our camp, I had a vision. And we kind of get the sense that she's spinning this. She calls it a vision, but it seems, honestly, like it's just a lot of really good logic, like Sherlock Holmes style. And the vision is this, that somewhere nearby there must be a place of arcane power that we can go and channel that raw energy to purify our fount of Aqua Gyaranis, and the crusade is back to where it should be. Now, more unified than ever since we got rid of the doubters. Okay, so that's the vision that she tells people, but let me break down the logic that I think that she used to get there, okay, where it wasn't necessarily all that holy. She reckons that if Lucavai was here, and the Crimson Keep was appearing in the distance, the two must have been meeting, which makes perfect sense. And while no one really knows where the keep will be, it's not unreasonable to assume it would locate itself near places of great power. Again, all of these cities are being founded on spots of large geomantic power, and so maybe there's one nearby, and if so, we can use it as a power source to purify the fount, saving the day and solidifying my place as their religious leader. Because, come on, show me a religious leader who would pass up the idea to give water where rivers ran with blood. Like, that's just such a picturesque miracle that it's like, of course she wants that. And that ends up being the plan for now. Find the source of power that likely drew the Crimson Keep in, and use it. Now, the environment that they're in is not super hospitable to scouting, but they do quite a bit and find, after a few days of just nasty climbing up sheer faces, they find a destroyed city, the remains of a place known once as Emberguard. This is the place where it seems to be humming with all kinds of power. And so Pontifex Zenestra and her crew move into the city, and that is where we will pick back up in tomorrow's video. But like all of these, I want to end it by asking the question simply, why is this cool? I'll be honest, the Actu side has not been my favorite side of the Crusade, just because I feel like it's just a lot of the same note of Zenestra taking more control and more control. But I do feel like in this section of the story, I liked that they broadcast her telling people that she had a vision, while then also giving us the details on how she could have reached that conclusion on her own, because now we don't know which it is. I like those little things where you can perceive this character as being genuine, the real article, and she certainly has performed huge acts of heroism and power and feats before, but there's also this like realpolitik thing where she's trying to solidify a power base. She wants their zealotry. She wants their unquestioned belief. She's not looking to sharpen, iron sharpens iron and we all get better together. She wants control. And it just makes for a good reading. I thought this story was much more interesting than, say, in the last book. I like it because it highlights the human element of the Crusade, right? The religious fervor was a theme in the Old World Empire, and I think they even had more units to really represent that, but this factionalism is interesting. And I like that at least one of the Crusade arms is dealing with it as a theme. I honestly would have thought the Ghiran side would have been the place to talk about religious fervor, because I assumed that they were going to go the route of like, there's tension between Sigmar worshippers and Alariel worshippers, because on the Ghiran side, Alariel is like literally there, IRL, doing a ritual to make rain wash away Nurgle stuff. It seems pretty deity-rific, if you will. But instead they focused on Akshi, where it wasn't about like choosing Alariel over Sigmar. It was just choosing Sigmar to the point of insanity. It's terrifying. And it's all breaking down in real time. But to the people caught within that crusade, they are caught in this logical loop, if you will. Maybe sunken cost fallacy might be the better way to say it, but a cult mentality. Everything they do is a vindication of their faith. They do the things that they do, even if they question them, because they have faith. It's a circle. All things exist to prove that we are right, and any contradictions that strike us down simply make us martyrs. And to be honest, I think that's best exemplified with the Pontifex's quote, "What are logistics compared to righteousness?" And if you are at all, even like a passing student of history, we have many in real life atrocities that can answer that question. The answer is nothing good. When one army is cut off with no resupply, nothing good has ever happened from that situation. I don't know what you're talking about. More than a few folks have met their end because some overpaid, really high up people didn't think too hard about day 2 of a war or a battle or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that's where logistics comes in. It's not just the initial showing of strength, but the foundational power of a force to take a punch and then deliver more. That's what logistics brings. Anyway, friends, I would love to hear your thoughts on the Crusade of Fire. I'm going to finish up The Mad King Rises, take a small 1 or 2 video break just to talk about Conquest and some other stuff that's been really exciting for me, and then I'm going to jump back in with the Shadow of the Crone. None of that is before, however, I finish this. So next video is going to be the conclusion of the Akshi side of Crusade in Mad King Rises, and then, like I said, we'll move into some other exciting kinds of lore coverage. So thank you all so much. If there are any characters from this book that you want highlighted, I'm already going to do a video on Sekra, the snake vampire lady. I believe she was the only named character added in this specific set. But we'll move on from there. So thank you so much for watching and listening, and I can't wait to catch you in my next video. Happy wargaming!